about being live and talking like that. I'm not going to start until a little bit later, of course. So we have the organizer, the speaker, coming in soon. We'll wait at least for him to join us before we start. But wondered, any one of you have ideas of what you'd like to? I asked this earlier, and there were less of you. Anything you'd like to know about what you'd like to see in the future? Yeah, more people. Oh, Christina's back. Welcome back. I'm talking to the folks over at what are they called? Oh my goodness, it's the people that help you prevent DDoS, Cloudflare, and they have a solution similar to the Lambda functions from Azure, from AWS, and the functions, the AWS functions. But they say it's there's no startup cost. It's right away.
I
There's
think
no go for it.
I think they're called worker functions.
Yes, hello, you're absolutely right. And the beauty of it's supposed to be that although they're not connected to anything, they're just by themselves. They don't. There's no services, unlike Google, AWS, and Azure all around them. They're supposed to be. You don't use them for a month, and then instantly you get an email, as I would say, and then you want to follow through and do something. It'll be instantly on because it's all the time running, and then they'll run. Have you heard anything about that, Taylor?
Yeah, I saw a because I'm big into the Neo4j community, and they put out a live stream building was it Zillow or a podcast app
Oh,
using Neo4j, and they were using the Cloudflare Flare functions. That was the first time that I've ever seen I seen them, and I was like, oh wow.
yeah,
They used it kind of as like a CDN. They
right.
used um, for the podcast app that they were doing.
Interesting. Did they mention why they were using Cloudflare or not like, anything
I don't
else?
I don't remember exactly why,
Yeah,
but yeah, it was a good video.
excellent. I'll check it out. That's a group that's up there, right, Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, and it's
Um,
still going, still monthly meetings at least, or every other month?
they um they've grown in popularity.
Good.
Um, and they've been doing since the pandemic, they've been doing a lot of live streams on
Mm,
like Twitch and YouTube.
yes.
Some of their community engagement advisors
Cool.
um, have been putting together like different apps, like building like a Zillow clone using the graph database and all that fun stuff. I put in the chat link.
I saw. Thank you for that. I'm gonna
Yeah,
check it out, see what it is. It's always fun. Do you guys feel, does anybody else watch people program on YouTube or Twitch?
I
Obviously you do, Taylor.
yes, yeah. Well, I'm very well with them at least very big into the graph database
Hmm.
of Neo4j, but the I've watched a few of the guy that started Comma AI.
That guy's
Halts.
crazy. That guy's
Yeah,
amazing.
he
Yeah, yeah.
he he did some like random like COVID stuff at the beginning of COVID.
He did like getting data from COVID or something like that.
Yeah, he like
Awesome.
was like using like he was doing some like Python stuff and like playing with like the DNA code base data set.
Oh, wow, wow, that's impressive.
He's like, we're gonna hack COVID. Let's see what happens.
Cool. All right. Yeah, more power to him, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I like. I was obsessed with all the different websites that provided data at the beginning, and there were plenty of services that showed you some stuff, but was just fun information for doing that. I help organize the sampleapis.com project, and so we thought about putting some stuff in there. Maybe we'll do that sort of in historical purposes a little bit later.
Yeah, that
But
would be that would be cool. Yeah, all the
yeah,
COVID data
yeah,
stuff is very interesting.
yeah. But what he was doing, Taylor, sound like a lot more fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
he was like, oh yeah, watch this, and um, like playing with the actual like DNA data set.
the guy, I don't. Do you know his name? I don't remember his name. It's the guy who hacked the first iPhone and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
Made the PS1 or PS3,
that's him. It's
4.
George Hotz,
Yes,
I think.
perfect.
Yeah,
He just, I love him. I think it's fantastic. He always acts like he's a kid in a candy store all the time playing, and
yeah,
he's a very successful businessman. I mean, that Coma AI, it has a lot of money. It's doing some amazing thing. That product is just amazing.
yeah. Being able to pretty much take your car to full autonomous with like a
Hmm.
few $100 worth of like Raspberry Pis and
Yeah, it's
cameras.
crazy. Did you ever hear how he does it? Like what is it that he's using? I mean, the car isn't supposed to have auto control, so how is he doing it?
It integrates with the built-in computer system of the car.
Right.
Um, I've seen some videos of him talking about it.
Hmm.
Um, and then he bought a few cameras modules and puts them on like the sides of the car in different locations. And then he like augments the built-in computer system of the car.
Yes. What I was talking about specifically is I thought I heard him say that it was that he lied to because the system doesn't you can't just tell the system isn't set to accept, okay, grab the steering wheel and make a quarter of a turn and then do two full turns because you're making a right. So what he does is he actually lies to the machine, to the car, and tells it there's a car that's about to hit you, and the car swerves. And so it serves to the right. There's no car there, and so what the machine's telling it is go right. And I don't know how precisely it does that. That's what I've been told. I haven't checked that. I haven't confirmed that, but that sounds again like a very hacky, love it, very genius way of doing it. So I think it's
Yeah.
fantastic. All right, folks. So just bear with me and see if we can get Mr. Ray on the in an email just to confirm. Okay. Sorry about that. I reached out to him on Twitter, but maybe email is the right way. Been lucky to get a lot of contacts, great people, and I know them personally, and yet the only contact I have is Twitter, unbelievably. So I don't know if that means I really know them. Miss Enrique, I thought I heard you come in there. Are you in there? Looks like we have quite a bit of people here. Let me see. We have 8 participants so far. Again, we're waiting more for Ray to join up. We are live on youtube.com/FloridaJS. I'll put that for everybody just in case for future purposes. I tend to trim the videos at that moment so you don't have to hear me talking or everybody talking for the beginning. It was just, but I feel it's part of the best part of the meetups. I miss being back in these places and be able to see you guys all and be able to have pizza, talk about different things that are interesting to you. Maybe not interesting, not something we can all talk about, but definitely I want to talk with you about. So if you guys feel like we'll see if we get a reply, and we'll see if we can get Mr. Ray to join us. Okay. We'll see. All right. So what we'll do is we'll do sort of, let me go ahead and I'll do this. I'll go ahead and share with everybody. Pardon me. Just move myself out of the way for a second. Can everybody see my screen? I think you guys can. Thank you, Christina.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Very good. Okay. So, so this is Damian Montero. We are going to be hearing in a couple of minutes once Ray comes over. Are your apps safe? How hackers play with your apps? I'm excited to hear that. You are what? We're FloridaJS. We're the largest organization of developers in South Florida, I believe all of Florida. We're a combination of 3 other groups. Jeremy Lawson is usually joining us, and he is part of what used to be Palm Beach JavaScript. I used to run Boca.js here in Boca Raton, Florida. And then we had Jeannie Ramos that ran React Fort Lauderdale, or React Broward, I think it was, pardon me. And the 3 of us have joined together to make this the biggest group and to get the most organizations. We meet first and last Tuesday of the month. We've done so for now quite a long time. Let me admit this next person that we're coming in. And we'll continue to do so. And, if you would like, I really would appreciate if you think you want to thank me or thank anybody of the group here, just simply join us at youtube.com/FloridaJS. We only record events that are related to tech, and then you will see every so often these events coming in live. Enrique is famous for letting us know that the moment he sees this goes live on YouTube, that he knows it's time to join. Whoops, sorry about that. All right, so there is the Tech Hub South Florida. So it's techhubsouthflorida.com or .org, pardon me, /Slack is a Slack channel that myself, Jeremy, and Sagiv, and some of the other great people in this event will always be at. So please do join us. So it's Tech Hub South Florida, .org/Slack. Check out the developers channel and then the events. And then if you're interested, the events hiring, you can connect with myself and Jeremy there and Jeannie. If Jeremy was joining us, he couldn't join us today, but he's always excited about the Code Palm Beach. These events are really meant for teaching kids how to code. So if you do have any kids or someone that you feel that should be interested in starting that career, that path, please join us. Please go to codepalmbeach.org. Otherwise, we are usually, if you're able to help, and you feel that you can give a little bit of your time, because it's usually on Saturdays, usually in the afternoon, so you might have a little bit of extra time, you can help some kids learn to code. Really, it's following the code camp. That we do, and so simply follow along with the instructions, and they'll get something, and usually it's a matter of just simply reading exactly what's on the screen. You'll find that it's out there. All right, at the very end of the event, we will have a giveaway for this event. Actually, we do not have a giveaway. Let's ignore that. We're going to do a giveaway next week, but I want you guys to, we'll wait for Ray in just a minute. If not, I do have some backup presentations, and we'll talk a little bit about it with everybody. We'll get Ray to join us in just a minute. Let's go ahead and stop sharing. I can figure out how to do that. That is amazing. Wow. All right.
He'll be here in just a few minutes. Okay,
Thank
Damien?
you so much. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
Let's see. What is amazing is I don't have the graph. I guess I went into. Thank you, Christina. I really appreciate that. That's okay. This is, you guys will see in a minute. Aha, Mr. Ray coming in. Well, then it's a good thing I had the slides ready.
Damien?
How are you, my friend?
Oh,
What's going on?
I am so sorry. You know what? I confused dates. Let me turn on my camera. Hang on a second. I confused dates, and I thought it was next week. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm running around. So I am so sorry. I'm sorry to everybody who signed in. I know you guys, this is an important, your time is important. So I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed right now.
Don't worry about it. Okay, so let's go ahead. Stop participant sharing. All right. So Ray, thank you very much for joining us. Ray has been, I've heard from Ray's talk several times. I was been impressed. Ray, I saw you when you were back at Jquery. I saw you joining Microsoft. I thought it has been fantastic. I've had you on some big Palm Beach tech events, and I'm honored that I can have you here at our event. Not a big deal. We just finished sharing. Let me go ahead. I made you the co-organizer, so you can just ignore sort of any pop-ups and all that. This is just in case I get kicked out and all that.
Don't worry about it.
So essentially, let's make sure the important people are made co-organizers. Sorry, Christina. And I say sorry because I made a co-organizer. Ray, take it away. We just talked about it. We just had a slide. Let me know if you can share your screen, because I think I had to, I just got stuck with my screen and I wanted to stop it. And I don't know if I let you share it. You should be able to share your screen.
Well, I won't have to share anything. That's a good thing. This is all going to be talking. And so it's going to be more about the journey for developers around security and some of the things that they have to consider. And so we're all developers. And if you're all ready, I can definitely kick this off.
Definitely, please.
So, if we really think about it, this landscape is changing dramatically. We're all going through this transformation now, having to blend so many different skills, so many different facets of the development process. And I think what's happening is, and in many cases, we're getting overwhelmed by what we're seeing. The DevOps, I guess the DevOps motions that a lot of people have started to embrace also tends to add a lot more pressure into the development cycle. And, when I first started myself and I started getting into, I was a developer, it was more the traditional waterfall. And so the cycles for development were long. I mean, we're talking like months and months, and sometimes even up to a year to build an application. That's no longer the situation nowadays. Now, I mean, it's just bam, bam, bam. And that adds not only pressure to getting things done quickly, but also pressure to securing software. And so if you really think about it, what exactly is software? Right? I mean, software is basically in everything we do nowadays. Software is in the websites we use for our online banking and our online shopping. I'm sure all of you love Amazon Prime because you want your stuff there the next day. Software is in these, the devices we use. I mean, it's our smartphones, it's our routers that get us onto the internet. And when you start really thinking about the complexity of it, even in the ship navigation systems that we take for granted, we hop on a cruise ship and we just know that we're going to get to some point, whether it's Cozumel or the Cayman Islands, whatever it might be. But ultimately, it's software that's guiding us down the seas, and it's allowing airline pilots to fly these really complex planes, these flying, I like to call them flying tin cans, basically. And it's at the heart of it, if you really think about it, what's powering software? It's developers. And we are under tremendous pressure. And I consider myself a developer because I've been a developer for 31 years. And even though I'm now more into the security side of things, I still have to think like a developer. I have to think about code, because just security now is being consumed by code. I was talking to Tim Malcolmbetter, who was the former red team lead for Walmart. And he said that everything that revolves around security nowadays is all based in code. You have, whether you're building tool chains for, let's say, attacking a site, or you're deploying systems, which is like Terraform. Well, what's Terraform? Infrastructure is code, basically. All that is developers. It's developers building these things and managing it. And the pressure we're feeling is because businesses want to get to market faster. If you think about the concepts of agile and DevOps, they were just processes created to streamline the development process. The business stakeholders wanted to get their new fancy apps out quicker. They wanted to make sure that their users got this new whiz-bang feature. And the more pressure that we put on each other, the more pressure we put on the staff, the more mistakes we're going to make, because ultimately we're human. But here's the other part of it. You know, as developers, I think we've always viewed security as an IT problem. I don't know about all of you. I don't want to generalize, but I know that I'm guilty of this. I've gone out there and said, oh, I just want to sling code, and that's a network problem. That's a security problem. And we always viewed security as kind of like this friction to deploying systems because we want to get it out faster. And what this has led to is that you have a whole group of developers that are very unprepared when it comes to secure coding practice, because they're not taught in universities. I mean, if you've gone through university systems, you may have gotten some security, classes here and there. But I was speaking to the University of Virginia just the other day, some students, and the security courses that are taught usually are complements to specific sections. If you go into software engineering, for example, you might get some security training, but it's generally not a fixture and part of the core curriculum that says, you're starting off in Java development. Not only are we going to teach you Java construct, but we're going to teach you what secure code looks like. And then once you get out into the real world, all these corporations just don't have the budget for training. I took a SANS course several years ago. That course was $10,000, and that wasn't including hotel and airfare accommodations, the whole entire kit and caboodle, meals. And so think about that. Think about your, let's say, a small business, and you have these developers. Can you afford to spend $10,000 to send them training? Many times you can't. So that becomes an issue. And then the other part is the corporations many times see security and development as cost centers. And so they may not make that investment in training. And it's not only security training, even just your developer training. How many of you are self-taught? How many of you continue to be self-taught and embracing new technologies? So think about now on the security side, where you have these companies who really sometimes look at you as, oh God, you're overhead, when in reality, you're all important parts of the whole gears that build these systems that get companies to have a really viable product and eventually have customers. So, I work for Veracode, and I'm sorry I didn't give you a proper intro. So fixated on getting this out to you because I was already late as it was. I now work for Veracode. I left Microsoft about 3 months ago, and I had been at Microsoft for 10 years. I led the developer relations team for the Edge browser. So I'm very much in tune with the web developer space and the developer in general. And then I shifted over to security. And one of the things that at Veracode they did was they do a lot of studies, they do a lot of surveys. And one of the studies that they grabbed information from was an ESG survey of cybersecurity professionals, and they found that 35% of those people who responded to the survey reported that less than half of the development teams are participating in formal security training. And if you really think about it, this is scary, because this is despite the fact that you have security issues happening, security breaches happening at a pace of something like every 39 seconds. And even with that, only 3% of US bachelor's degree graduates have cybersecurity related skills. And so it's hard to fathom that security is not like a first-class citizen for the business stakeholders. And I don't lay blame on the security team. I don't lay blame on the developer team. It just hasn't been a priority at all. And the deeper that I've dug into security, the more I've seen this being a consistent narrative where security is only done to the extent of the risk that a lot of companies feel, and it's not an investment made to take care of their systems and to take care of their brand, their customer satisfaction, their customer confidence, because business continuity matters. It's a big deal. And so when you start factoring all this, the fact that training is not being provided, that developers and security are many times seen as a cost center, that universities aren't providing it as part of the curriculum because professors aren't empowered and given the tools to do it, all this adds up to a lot less secure software. And how did we kind of get to this situation where security and software has become such a critical focus? Well, if you think about it, I'm assuming that many of you have started to explore at some point shifting into some cloud-based infrastructure. And as more companies transition into cloud-based infrastructures, there's going to be some benefits. They're going to have lower cost of ownerships. They're going to have flexible scalability. Of course, they can centralize access to global assets. And one of the biggest things is compliance. I mean, a lot of these companies need to have that capability to store data in a compliant way, whether it's regarding GDPR or California's privacy laws, or just in general PII storage. But ultimately, they're more resilient if set up correctly to attacks. And when that happens, when you have this network stack that's now more resilient, threat actors are going to look for new opportunities. And what does that happen? Where do they shift their attention to? They start shifting their attention to the software stack. And that means that your applications, the ones that you're deploying, not only to the web, but anything that's publicly available via an API or whatever it might be, some remote access software, now becomes a target for threat actors. And that's why you're seeing attacks on things like ICS and SCADA systems, of course, websites. But that's where you're seeing like remote buffer overflows happening, because any software that's connected now becomes a new opportunity for a threat actor to hit them. And we've seen that with things like the SolarWinds supply chain attack. That was a scary one, obviously, because we're talking, several thousand companies affected, and some of the biggest companies in the world being affected by a source that was managing IT infrastructure. If you really think about the implications of a SolarWinds attack, and I'm assuming at the very least by now everybody's heard of SolarWinds to some extent. SolarWinds was managing the network infrastructure of many of the world's biggest organizations. And so imagine the opportunity, in this case by a nation state, to inject code into SolarWinds that gave them backdoor access to all these big corporations. That's a big deal. And then you had things like PHP.net, who they were managing their own Git infrastructure. Instead of using something like GitHub or GitLab or something like that, they were managing on their own. And a misconfiguration allowed a bad actor to inject code into the PHP.net code base. Thankfully, they had processes in place that allowed them to catch it, typical code reviews and pull request reviews. But imagine if that would have gotten through. And I think the code, they said it was kind of innocuous, but still, imagine if bad code would have gotten through on the PHP code base and a new version got pushed out. PHP is still pervasive. It's on 70% of websites on the internet. And then, of course, the Equifax hack. That was a Struts, Apache Struts, software vulnerability. So a lot of software is being affected worldwide nowadays because of cloud infrastructure becoming more resilient, companies embracing it. And I have to say it also the fact that we're humans and we're going to make these mistakes. We continue to have technical debt piling up, and that technical debt it's becoming the bane of our existence. I'm guilty of having code that I just do not want to manage anymore. I wrote it many years ago, and I'm like, oh my God. And looking back at the code, I dread actually going in there and trying to make modifications because it's been so long. So imagine me, a single developer, feeling that way. And now you go into a corporation where you have all this technical debt. And in many cases, you have new developers coming in who have no clue of what the code base does, and they're trying to figure it out. it's a challenge. And then you have the continued pervasiveness of some of the more common vulnerabilities, which at this point shouldn't happen. You have the OWASP, what they call the OWASP Top 10, the Open Web Application Security Project. And they monitor common vulnerabilities that happen in code bases. They get data through different methods, and things like cross-site scripting attacks or injection flaws into SQL and NoSQL databases and LDAP. That continues to happen. And to me, some of the worst is like people reinventing cryptography. You have existing cryptographic libraries that help you secure things like passwords and stuff, but yet people continue to want to reinvent the wheel on things that have been as proven and established, tried and true. And those, when you do those things, that's when you're opening yourself up. And I hate to say it, sometimes you're going to inadvertently open up other people to these issues. The other thing I see quite a bit are developers who blindly just install things. Think about the last time you installed something, whether you're an NPM developer, a Python developer, .NET, the number of developers I've seen that just blindly do NPM install, or they install a NuGet package without really vetting the code, or go into Ruby gems and install something without understanding what the dependency chains are, is staggering. And I look at it now, obviously I guess I'm a little bit biased, and what do they say, hindsight is 20/20 type of thing. But it's the truth, and we have to be a little bit more responsible as professionals. We have to try to understand what's going on behind the scenes. I think it was the Node.js project package called Pad Left, I think it was, that really shook the world, at least in terms of JavaScript development, because there was an argument, some kind of disagreement between NPM and the author of Pad Left, and that author just basically took off that package from NPM. And so many other developers were directly linking to that package on NPM that I think it was like most node-based applications just stopped working because the package was no longer available to them. Now imagine if that package maintainer had decided to do something malicious, inject code that gave them remote code execution, extracted passwords, so many different things that these things can do. And sometimes we just make assumptions that open source is secure. I've always heard this, open source is more secure because you have more people looking at it. And I can tell you that open source is not more secure because you have more people looking at it. It's more secure if you have a large, well-vetted community of people that are constantly analyzing code and analyzing pull requests. But the majority of these open source projects are not the size of a React or a Jquery or something like that. They're not going to be the next Angular. Most of them are small efforts run by one person or two people, and they're a passion project. And if you are taking a dependency on a passion project and assuming that all is going to be well and everything's going to be vetted 100%, then you're doing yourself a disservice. You're putting yourself in the line of fire. You're putting yourself in a situation where somebody could do some harm, and it's been known to happen. It's been known where you have a developer who abandons an open source effort, and then somebody else will pick it up. This has happened in the NPM community with a Node package where somebody said, "Hey, I don't want to manage this anymore," and they give it away, and that person turns it into a malicious package. The same with Google Chrome extensions. In many cases, if you ever think about Google Chrome extensions, what are they? They're just JavaScript. They're web development technologies. And so many times it's been shown that these add-ons, these extensions for browsers, are then sold to a third party, which then inject malicious code. As developers, we have to be more cautious with what we do. And I'm not really focusing on Chrome extensions, obviously, because I don't think most of you build Chrome extensions. We're in the JavaScript world here, and I'm assuming most of you are either doing Node.js development or you're doing some kind of front-end development. But still, it's good to remember that these security issues can affect us in so many different ways. I used to work for Mozilla, and I was the Firefox add-ons community manager. And I can tell you that way back when, those add-ons were like mini applications. And if you managed to inject malicious code into a Firefox add-on, well, it was running with the same permissions as the browser and user land. And there was no sandboxing like there is now. So we have to be cautious. We have to really consider all these different things. If you're going to sell a project, who are you selling it to? That's another consideration. Don't blindly install things without understanding what's being placed onto your systems. And I know it sounds obvious, but it's just too many times developers just don't do it. Now, one of the things that we can do as developers is obviously, people say, well, you need to learn the software development lifecycle, and you need to learn about security and all this stuff and take training, but that's hard. And honestly, I don't expect any developer to want to become a security expert, because that's not what they signed up for. Every developer I've ever met wants to build good code. They want to build secure code as best as to their knowledge, and they want to build really great user experiences. They're not in there to become a security expert. If that was the case, they probably would have started from the get-go. I'm an example of that. I transitioned later on in my career. So I don't see I've never heard a developer say, I want to ship bugs. That's not what I hear. But at the same time, what are security issues? Security issues are in fact bugs. And I think maybe we need to start changing the way that we think about security issues as part of being the normal QA process, that we're fixing these bugs that we produce. And I don't feel like that's the norm nowadays. I don't feel like we think of security as just that part of the QA process. Data from the Veracode State of Software Security report shows that year after year, developers continue to produce code with vulnerabilities. And in 2020, we found that 76% of apps have at least one security flaw. And the scariest part of that is that half of the security findings are still open 6 months after discovery. And what this points to, again, is a lack of developer security training. The developer teams are simply not enabled to fix the security flaws in their code. And at the same time, the security teams don't have the bandwidth to train them. But this is not only a developer or security team issue. I mean, it goes back to what I was saying about colleges and universities. We need to get them to embrace security as a priority in computer science courses. We need to work with educators and get them incented to learn and incorporate modern secure coding principles into their curriculums. And this is, by the way, this is starting to evolve. I've spoken to a couple of professors from Tufts University, from the University of Virginia. There's some serious discussion going on within the education space to try to incorporate security curriculums into the normal computer science education process. But on top of that, companies need to rethink their investment in security training, especially when when you consider the cost of a breach in terms of compliance and brand trust. I mean, I think GDPR. Excuse me 1 second, because I have a puppy who wants to get out. There you go, girl.
I had the same thing earlier, so I understand.
COVID. There you go.
Yes.
COVID lifestyle. There you go. All right. So what I was saying is, companies need to kind of rethink their security training, because if you start taking into consideration things like the cost of a breach in terms of compliance or customer trust, that's huge. GDPR is very expensive. I don't know the exact number, but I know that every time there is a breach of information that affects GDPR in some way, there is a substantial cost. It is non-trivial. When I was at Microsoft and GDPR was right around the corner, there was a massive effort around the whole entire organization to become GDPR compliant in the way that information was stored, accessed, everything like that. So it's no joke. And so you'd hope that companies would start taking this very seriously and investing in the developer mindset, in the developer training, and making sure they better understand how to write these secure pieces of code. But we ultimately, it is a learning process that we have to go through. And so how do we help developers learn about security? Well, I think one of the things that we should do is kind of expose them to what secure code looks like. I'm a firm believer that developers are visual learners. I've seen that so many times, and I think what happens a lot is that you have presenters that go out and they'll take, I don't know, they'll take something like what is this app called, a WebGoat from OWASP, and they'll run through a boatload of stuff and they'll say, hey, these are all vulnerabilities, and that's great. And then many times the audience will say, oh wow, that's it, I didn't know that could happen. Oh wow, that's hard. And then they'll go back to work, because work is still there and you have nothing to reinforce it. I think one of the things we need to start doing is breaking down code into more digestible formats where they can see what does an actual piece of insecure code look like, and then take them from there and say, what can a threat actor actually do with this bad code if it gets pushed out? And then let's take it to the next level and say, how do we fix this code? On top of that, I think there has to be more exposure to actual tooling that helps developers identify these problems. Look, we're not going to find every bit of vulnerable code. It's just impossible. There's so much stuff going on in our day-to-day work life that it's hard to identify every bit of code. If that was the case, we wouldn't need security people. We wouldn't need the security monitoring. All our code would be perfect and everything would be great. But that's not the case. And that's where companies like Veracode, for example, come in. They have tools that do static analysis, so they can identify patterns in your code that are typically known to be insecure and can lead to problems. They can prioritize those vulnerabilities. And then they have software like software composition analysis, which can dig deeper into the dependency chain of these packages you're incorporating. It can also help you with compliance issues. So software exists that provides this capability. I mean, shoot, even GitHub offers things like Dependabot, which tells you when you have an outdated package, or a package that it's been known to be vulnerable based off some kind of notification that came out. So these things exist. This is not stuff that's not there. There is a cost to it. Bottom line, I mean, I guess everything has a cost nowadays. Even though it's open source, even the open source software comes at a cost, because you're sacrificing that freely available software for not having that complete control over how you're developing it, and also some of the security challenges that may come with it. So it's a give and take. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It is what it is. Now, here's one thing I want to say though. I don't think all developers should become security experts. I think that's perfectly okay if they don't want to. Why would you? Look, security is tough. It's not something that everybody wants to get into. And I don't think everybody wants to poke behind the curtain. I've seen some things behind the curtain and I'm like, oh God, why did I do that? Why can't I just close back that door? But I can't anymore. And so now I'm stuck with it, It can be fun. And then sometimes you're like scared to death. And like, I need to get my tinfoil hat now, because sometimes it scares the heck out of me what I know. But what we should be doing is empowering those developers that really have that curiosity to take it to the next level, so that they can continue to evolve and expand their career into something that makes them excited. Security got me excited. It kind of reinvigorated my career, reinvigorated that desire to poke around and poke at things and actually get back into coding. And I like to call myself a security champion, and you'll hear that term thrown around a lot: security champions, security champions. Security champions really are just people who have this genuine interest in expanding their breadth of knowledge into something else. That's what I like to call it, or I like to consider it. They're developers that have this interest in understanding how security works, how their peers in the security team function, and what are the things that are important to those people. And they also are bridge makers. I like that term, bridge makers, a lot, because security champions tend to be able to bridge communications between their security peers and also the business stakeholders. Because if you really think about it, that's the virtuous cycle. If you understand this all. If you're this person who can take the business needs and then conceptualize them and break them down into a software product or just a product in general, and then be able to incorporate other developers and be able to incorporate security folks and DevOps folks. And you have this capability to bring all these wonderful people together to build something awesome and secure. You're building bridges and you're a security champion because you understand the code, you understand the business, and you're empowered and trained to understand the security needs. And that's a critical thing. So I think it's important to continue to cultivate and motivate these people so they share their views and findings in a way that's collaborative and they're empathetic to all the teams across the board. This is not just a developer thing. This is a whole group thing that everybody should just kind of circle the wagons around these. I call them unicorns. I guess that's what I describe them. They're unicorns who have this genuine desire just to have their hands in so many different pots. And I can tell you from experience that security can be super, super fun. The first time that I managed to get what they call it popping a shell, which is basically getting remote access to another machine, I was hooked. And, Christina Solano, who's on here as well. I mean, I remember the first time she told me she popped one of the shells on one of the computers she was attacking, and it was I know it was a big deal to her, and it's kind of a bit of a rush, and that's how you start getting people excited about moving on to the next level and writing secure code and testing out testing out for OWASP vulnerabilities, or trying out new tool chains that help to improve your software development lifecycle, or diving into DevOps and seeing how they can improve how your CI/CD pipeline works and securing your secrets and doing code signing and all this fun stuff. So I would urge anybody who even has an inkling about security, like that small interest, just explore it. Just go and dig into OWASP.org, OWASP.org, and start looking around. I think you're going to be truly amazed and impressed by all the information that's been accumulated over decades of research and a lot of vulnerabilities. And you too can be that next security champion. I know that at Veracode, we use them as, ourselves. We use them to obviously do our research and share it internally so that we can build better products. But we also want to make sure that our clients, the customers who are using our products, they get those learnings, and that we have people who can effectively share it out. We have something called application security consultants and solution architects who are essentially security champions. And they're the ones who can distill the business needs and the security needs and the developer needs and share that with customers to solve their problems. It's a unique skill. It really is a great skill to have. It's not for everybody. I don't want to say that don't feel like you have to rush into it. Take your time and understand it. But ultimately, in order for you to become a security champion, it's going to take time of having reinforced learning. I think the saying that I've always heard is that it takes 10 years to master any programming language, and learning security is equally challenging. When I decided to transition over, everybody thought I was going into application security because I had done development for so long, but it was a major career change for me, and I wanted to try different things. And the one thing I learned out of this is that there are so many different avenues within security if you really want to explore it. There's digital forensics and incident response. There's open source intelligence. Of course, you have the pen testing and the red teaming. That's the offensive side. You have SOC analysts identifying attacks and trying to figure out how you're going to react to them. There's so many different worlds, and that I would tell you that if you're going to jump into it, take your time. Don't go with what you solely know. It's hard to get out of your comfort zone sometimes, but don't just immediately say, I'm going to become this, because there's a lot of different avenues for you to take. But if coding is your passion, if this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and you want to go down that route, and you just want to complement these skills, that I can tell you the secure coding courses are awesome. You're going to come out of it saying, holy cow, I didn't know I need to do this to protect my code base. But here's the thing. You need to follow up on any course that you do. If you take a course, don't just leave the course, learn a bunch of stuff, and then go back and just work and never practice again. I mean, practice makes permanent. That's the best way to think about it. You need to practice so you can make this permanent and ingrained in your daily habits. Too many of us go off and we'll take a course and we'll read a book or whatever, and then just put it to the side, and then that's it. We never reinforce this. And reinforcement means going and using things like Veracode security labs, which does precisely that. It's a lab environment where you can jump in and you can practice different techniques. Or maybe you need to have mentoring sessions, both giving mentoring to your teammates, but also getting them. Share the wealth, because when you share information the same way you share code, you're kind of reinforcing that in your head. You're reinforcing the topics that you're talking about in your head. And then once you've learned these skills, take them back to your office and start doing secure code reviews. That's another way of practicing. I just want to warn you, because when you start doing secure code reviews, your teammates might be a little ticked off at you if you start finding stuff in their code and you're like, hey, your code's insecure, you got to fix this. They're going to be like, oh, you're giving me extra work. That's where the whole culture comes in. You got to start building culture around security, and make sure you buy them some gifts so that they're not angry at you. And of course, you can have the traditional things like brown bags, where you can go and say, all right, let's do some homework on some of the new AppSec things that came out, whether it's OWASP who announced it or something that you saw on some kind of online site. Sit down and break it down. I've done that. I've gone through threat intel reports and said, oh, this is really cool. Look at how they did this. And sometimes it's assembly code. I'm like, that's cool, but I'm not going to learn assembly. There's just no way I'm doing that. But if you're a developer and you understand the code that they're using, sit down and break it down. Go line by line and say, oh, I understand it. Just be careful when you don't download code you don't know, okay? Don't download code, put it on your machine and run it and say, oh, guess what? Because then you might just get pwned, okay? A lot of suspicious stuff out there. You don't want to be a victim inadvertently, all right? Go out to owasp.org and look at the top 10. Try to determine if any of those top 10s are in your code base. And if they are, try to figure out how you would solve it. Look at the remediation techniques and try to work on that, because that's gonna make you that better developer. That's gonna make you that more informed developer. And that's going to help you secure your software across the organization, because ultimately you need to get into the attacker mindset. I know it sounds weird, like why would I want to be an attacker? If you know how the attackers work, you're going to start thinking about it as you're building your systems. That I'm a firm believer in that now. Now that I've gone kind of like the offensive route. I do penetration testing now. I'm focusing on red teaming, so I understand a lot more about how these bad actors think and how they try to get into your system. I do a lot of things like Hack the Box, which is they're virtual hacking labs. Try Hack Me, CyberSec Labs. The great thing about those is that they let me practice these cybersecurity skills in a legal way. Because obviously, if I decide that I'm going to go and hack into Damien's website, he probably wouldn't be very happy, and I'd probably get a call from the federal law enforcement. So, Damien, I promise I'm not going after your site. Okay. So, and there are projects that are freely available. If you're good at setting up VMs or Docker images or whatever, you can download something like JuiceShop. Christina did a great presentation about a month and a half, 2 months ago on JuiceShop and some of the vulnerabilities that you can find in JuiceShops and even how to remediate them. So I'd urge you to go back and look through that presentation. But JuiceShop is a great system. It's based off of Node.js, Express, Angular. I think it has a MySQL database in the back end, and it's purposely vulnerable. If you want to learn about application security, both from the offensive side and then also from the defensive side of how to remediate some of these things, JuiceShop is a really great project to look at. And it's on the owasp.org site. So, the one thing I want to say is that as you go through this process and you start learning about security, it's going to be really important that you take into account collaboration and empathy, because everybody has their own priorities, and they also have their own work to do. And everybody's mind is off in their own world. Sometimes we forget about each other. And so this is where the collaboration and empathy part comes in. You have to understand that business continuity matters. You're going to have leaders that are going to say, I need to get this done. We need to make sales. Sales is what's driving your salary, blah, blah, blah. That's what all they're thinking about. No problem. I get that. And developers just want to build great experiences. I mean, ultimately, we sling code and we build these great experiences because we know that when the user clicks on that button to press it to place the order, they're going to get it and they're going to be super happy, and we're going to be excited because our stuff works. And then the security folks have a super critical job, which is ensuring that there are safe environments, not only for our customers, but also for us. And so if you understand all those things and you understand where everybody else's priorities are and how they fit into this world within your business, it's going to make you that much of a better collaborator with everybody else. Because organizations that successfully implement secure practices, they do so because all these stakeholders, they've got together at some point to understand what the priorities of the business are and not just the individual silos. So gaining this understanding will help you ensure that agile processes continue to deliver quickly and securely. It positions you to provide training and education that targets your specific business needs, and it positions security in the proper context of your business needs. So with that, I thank you all very much for your patience and kind of letting me still present and chat with you. And I'm going to stick around a little bit here. And hopefully this has helped out in some fashion in terms of understanding where security sits within the developer space and how you can become a better security developer.
Thank you, Ray. That was fantastic. We do have a couple of questions. Sagiv has been putting his hand up there. Sagiv, would you be able to ask your questions by yep, go for it.
Sure. Thank you very much. Excellent talk.
Oh, thank you.
And so is it your opinion that the crux of the issue, especially when looking at the landscape and looking at large companies, that they view it as kind of a built-in cost of doing business, where if they get hacked, the reputational damage and the financial damage is probably just something that they can absorb? And kind of looking at it from a cynical game theory point of view, if the cost to train and hire someone to fix it exceeds the cost of the damage, reputational and financial, they're just not going to do it because who cares? Is that the issue?
Yeah.
If it is, how do we mitigate that? How do we change that? Because basically it comes down to, in my opinion, it doesn't hurt enough. They don't care. They're just going to absorb it and life goes on.
It's a hard question to answer, and I don't want to generalize because I don't think every business is like that. But if you look at like financial institutions, that's a great example. They know that credit card fraud is just the cost of doing business nowadays, and it's not to say that they're not working to fix it. We've seen dramatic improvements in credit card fraud detection across the board. This is not only on credit card companies, but even the companies that are taking orders. Amazon's great at this. Amazon does so much stuff to vet new signups on their site. I was listening to the Privacy, Security, and OSINT podcast by Michael Bazzell. He was talking about the fact that when you create a new Amazon account, if you create it using a VPN and a voice over IP phone, you're dead in the water. And so these things they're going to evolve. But I do believe, and this is actually, it was interesting. I was reading up on the CISSP. I was doing a study guide on the CISSP certification. And it's one of these certifications that I consider it almost like a get past the recruiter type of certification, one of those check boxes. And it's very expensive to do, but as I was going through it, and I never got it because I didn't need to do it for what I was focused on. But in there, they actually talk about kind of that there is that companies will, they'll invest in security to the extent of the risk they're willing to tolerate. So I've read this before. I don't have any evidence of a company saying we're only going to invest $5 million because that's the maximum risk anyways, that will, that's the maximum loss we'll take. It's not something that I've actually seen in process, but it's definitely something that I've read. And I think that it sounds like it makes sense to me.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's funny that talking about companies that took it seriously, I was working for a company and mainly what their software was internal. So it was helping them run the business. And because of the fact that they were B2B, business to business, the salespeople were the front end. The website was something that could have been hosted on GitHub pages because it didn't really have anything other than information and some pictures. And then all of a sudden they had this one website that I was given that was placed for everybody to see in public, in other words. So, and there was a username and password login. And what's crazy is, and I had suggested, perfect, since I need sort of a report, because it was a report for the customers. So instead of email them an Excel spreadsheet, since I'm going to just need a copy, and the copy is like, at the end of the month, just give me a copy and we'll transfer each time so that if you feel safe, it's safe. And the CTO had been part of a company that was hacked, and so she found it very, very important to have it safe. And also, I made those suggestions of this, physical separation of this server that's out in the internet compared to this other one. And yet, when they went ahead and showed up on the website, showed up the security company that really tested it. The tests they were doing were ridiculous. It was just like what they called as fuzzing, where they would try, they would do the normal thing, log in as user 1 and try to see the reports of user 2. Okay. But then it was just like, okay, can you accept delete, instead of in a post request? No, because it was C#, it was just plain and simple. And it was like, she surprised me that that you passed the test. And I was like, what test? And it was this one. But it was amazing because, there are plenty of companies, I think, out there that pretend to test your website. They don't pretend to charge your credit card. They do charge your credit card. And then they don't seem to do much. But it is amazing, as you're right. Even for companies that consider it incredibly important, it's tough when they, when you as a developer have been given the right to test the software and the company thinks it's important, finding the right company and to do what.
It is very hard, and there's a lot of companies out there, and a lot of companies that may not have the same level of skills as others. Thing is that how many small and medium-sized businesses can afford a FireEye or FireEye Mandiant? How many of them can afford the tip of the spear incident response folks, or the tip of the spear training companies and things like that? Right. SANS courses are really good. I want to stress that they're expensive, but they're really good. They're thorough courses. But ultimately, what it boils down to is that, do you have time to take a course? And then when you come back, do you have time to implement what you just learned? Because you've just spent a week away, your work hasn't gone away, and now you're coming back and you still have to catch up on work. And think about how quickly you lose things if you don't use them. I took a course and it was a course on advanced exploitation. And if I remember 5% of what I took in that course, it was a very expensive SANS course, it'd be a lot, simply because when I came back, I didn't use it again. Could I go back through all the manuals? Yeah, I have the manuals there, and I'm sure it'd be a refresher, but it wasn't part of my every single day of using it and using it. And so I think it's important that if you take a course, that you dedicate time to practicing. I dedicate time during the week to practicing because I like offensive security. I enjoy it. I'm learning the AppSec stuff now, and I'm practicing during work, but I don't want to lose the things that I've also learned before that.
Right.
And it takes a time commitment. It's not easy, especially I have a family, so I have to balance it out with my wife. And I tell her, look, I'm going to spend 1 or 2 hours just doing this and going over code and or going over exploits or testing this out or setting up these systems. It's a challenge. And I would say that in many cases, us as professionals, we just have to dedicate the time, our own personal time, to learning these new things. It's not going to be, you may not get the support that you want at work.
And you feel this OWASP organization, I put on the link on the chat, that's a good one for some courses or some information to learn?
Yeah, OWASP I would say that from a nonprofit organization, in terms of application security specifically, OWASP is where you want to go. They're the organization that everybody always references when it comes to application security standards, new emerging things that are happening in the application security space. There are obviously other corporations which are private, for-profit organizations. You have Veracode, Synoptis, Checkmark, SNE, all these companies, which are really great companies, and they're doing their own proprietary stuff. From a learning opportunity perspective, if you want something that's either no cost or maybe reasonably cost, OWASP is a great place to start. And then from there, as you develop interest in it, maybe you're going to expand out into other areas. But for right now, I think OWASP that's the first place you should start and get familiar with it.
I just realized that they had asked me, what was I think now I just yes. Oh my God, I'm supposed to be practicing some kind of OWASP training. All right, so I'm going to take over this this meeting. What specifically should I go to? I mean, my company, I subcontract. It's 14 levels deep, and eventually, I work for the company I actually work for. They actually asked for some OWASP training. So it's just going to go to the website. Is there a basic one? Is there one that you suggest? One you took that you really enjoyed?
The training that I've taken has been. It's been primarily on network security. I've also taken some, I call it more the web application pen testing courses from like eLearn Security, which is they're great as well. It's now called INE. They were the company eLearn Security that was acquired by another company. But with OWASP, the thing is, I would say start with the OWASP top 10 and understand what are the most common issues that developers are facing inside their code bases. Try to see what they're saying when it comes to the OWASP top 10. Let me see if I can find it here. So yeah, there it is right after the link.
I'm okay. It's on the front page. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to paste that link in there.
Please.
And when you go to there, when you see OWASP top 10, I wouldn't look at it as I would look at it as a broad thing. This is not specific to any individual language. These are top 10 vulnerabilities across a broad range of different programming environments. So you're going to see SQL, NoSQL, LDAP injection across Java, .NET, JavaScript, whatever it might be. The same thing's going to go for XXC. If you're creating, let's say, an API and you allow XML and you don't sanitize that XML that's coming across, well, guess what? Bad actors have found that they may be able to inject system calls into that code if you don't parse it, depending on the way you parse it. So a lot of these things are definitely applicable more broadly across development stacks. And so I would say start off with this so you have at least a foundation of an understanding of what some of these things are, and then poke around in here. If you're a JavaScript developer, which Damien, I know you are, you might just say, all right, I want to jump in and start taking a look at JuShop. And the reason is because JuShop is based off of Node.js and Express, and it has Angular on the front end.
Yep.
And it lets you kind of understand what vulnerable code looks like, how it acts, how you can get into it. It's a capture the flag, basically. That's what it is. Right. It's a really cool thing. Like if you ever wanted to do something really fun for the group, and it's funny, Christina and I had kind of talked about this a while back, and we thought about doing something like this, but I think logistics were really challenging. You could take JuShop, which has a CTF scoreboard, and then open it up to the group and let them go at it and see who actually wins in owning the most areas of JuShop. And that could be a really fun way of exposing folks to insecure applications and getting them familiar with how a bad actor would do it. That could be really fun, and maybe you could put it up on an Amazon EC2 instance. You run it there, and then you lock it down and say, all right, everybody has to pre-register. You get their IPs, and you lock it down, and you don't let them hack it, because otherwise it would just be nuts.
Right. The moment that it starts being available, every script kiddie out there starts attacking it. It's, okay.
Here you go, Scott. I just pasted it in there.
Thank you.
You know, with JuShop, the great thing about it is that it gives you so many different ways of installing it. You can install it as you know, as a Docker container. They have vagrant scripts. If you want to, you know, use VirtualBox or VMware, you can create a VM and install it on there. And it even lets you deploy to Heroku, which I don't recommend, only not because it's Heroku, it's just because when you deploy to Heroku and you're not blocking any type of external access to it, you're in that same boat of not having a firewall and not doing IP restrictions, and you're letting everybody hit it. So
right.
But you know, to me, this is kind of a cool way of getting the community involved. I'm happy to help you with that, by the way, and I know Christina would be more than happy. But if you ever want to do that, we can kind of sit there and figure out how do we get something up in a way that anybody can hit it without wreaking havoc on everybody else's machines, you know, and that's the big thing, you know.
Yeah.
So,
I hear you. So it has to be in a place at least local, you know, in the computer.
Yeah, the Veracode Security Labs actually has JuShop installed. If you all want to see it, let me security. What is it? I'm trying to see Security Labs -CE, I think it is. Veracode.com. I'll tell you right now. Not on my work machine, that's why. So if you all want to tinker around and learn stuff for free, there you go. You can go there to Security Labs.
Okay.
This is the free implementation of Veracode Security Lab. This is a community edition. Right. And so you can go in there, just register for an account, try some of the different challenges. They even have JuShop. So if you want to tinker around with JuShop kind of in a safe environment without having to scaffold everything up, you can play with that. And that'll give you another opportunity to learn more about secure coding practices.
Perfect. Okay.
So, are there any other questions? Anybody else have questions about security in general? Application
everybody should
security?
feel free to unmute themselves. So sorry, I didn't interrupt Ray. But everybody should feel free to unmute yourselves, ask questions. You can ask in chat if you feel not comfortable. But feel free to unmute yourself and ask here. We're at that moment.
By the way, David, I remember that you were very, very prominent in the WordPress space, and WordPress is one of the bigger, one of the most widely attacked CMSs around. In fact, there's a tool called WP Scan, which if you've never used on one of your sites, it's really interesting. Yeah, so WP Scan is a fun tool. And if you ever want to see whether your site is susceptible to SQL injection attacks, you use a tool called SQL Map. Now, a lot of these tools you have to install, you know, they're Linux based, so I don't know if they'll run on Mac OS. A lot of them are just, I run them in VMs. But it's really interesting to see the results of some of these tools and how well they work. And so to give you, it should give you perspective that these tools are available to anybody. When you hear the term script kiddie, it's literally they call them script kiddies because you're getting very young people who just download the tool and just press go and they get results. And now, granted, those aren't the ones that are they're not going to be doing the espionage and all that stuff. I mean, that's a whole different level there. But they can do a lot of damage. They can make your life impossible. I mean, if you think about what was it? Who was the 17-year-old out of Tampa that just arrested? That took over. I think it was took over Twitter's admin console. And so that was, you know, think about that, a 17-year-old who just wanted to do it for jokes and for making some Bitcoin. And that was just social engineering. And yep, the Panama Papers was a WordPress hack.
I saw some great. I watched the security now, but one of the ones. Let me take it. The Dark Knight Diaries is wonderful, and what it reminds me of, it was the two times in a row they hacked Trump's Twitter account before he was president and afterwards.
Yeah.
And both of the time because it was the password was you're fired. So sometimes you don't need a special software to try to hack things and all that. So
yeah, no, it's a lot of times it's there's so many word lists out there. Let me find this word list here. I'll tell you exactly.
And Equifax password was admin.
Isn't that
That's
crazy?
Taylor.
Yeah,
that's
that's
crazy.
wild. I'll give you an example of how much information there's available here. So if you go there, these are just word lists, and there's nothing. Nobody has to worry about this link there. This is just word lists that you download, and they're going to have common passwords, and they're going to have different things for discovering Active Directory names, SPN, service principal names. I was doing a hack the box the other day, which had to do an LDAP search. And there was another one for, what was it? God, it was it's an IPsec VPN name or something like that. It was just the craziest things. And you're like, all this stuff is freely available. And when you start digging into offensive security OS distributions like Kali Linux, Kali Linux is just chock full of all types of tools. Granted, when you download the ISO for Kali Linux and you install it, you're sitting there saying, okay, I got Kali Linux installed. Ultimately, unless you know what you're doing, it doesn't really make a difference. It's like everything, But once you start learning how some of these tools work and you start understanding how to piece the puzzles together, that's where you become really effective. Because like right now, if I decided that I wanted to do a scan on a site, first thing I do is run Nmap. And Nmap's going to tell me what are the ports that are open. And then from there, I'm going to say, all right, here are the ports. And boom, 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 boom. Maybe it's going to be port 22. It's going to be port 80. And it's going to be, I don't know, 445, whatever it might be. And then I'm going to do banner enumeration. And I'm going to understand what are some of the services and what are the common attack vectors that I have. Okay, so here's 137, 139, and 445. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see if they have shares going. Are there any open shares? I'm going to try the low-hanging fruit. And then from there, continue enumerating and going and digging. That's all it is. It's continuous digging and having a methodology in place to understand what each individual open port does. And then when you go to a port, you have a methodology that says, if it's port 80, what am I going to do? I'm going to do a scan to determine what the web server is and what are the headers and what are the options that I have on that server. Does it let me do puts? If I can do a put, that'd be fantastic, things like that. I'm going to do a directory enumeration. I want to see all the subdirectories that are available. I want to see if it has a robots.txt. If it's running Tomcat, does it have their Tomcat manager open? Can I upload a WAR file? But the one thing I've learned over time is that all this comes from experience. It's when I first got into this, I was like, okay, there's port 445. What do I do now? And I can do a net use. That's great. Okay. So what? That doesn't mean it's going to tell me squat. I really have to get more information about what are the users behind it? What are the permissions I have on there? What all these different aspects of the port and the services that are running. And then you have Windows, you have Linux, you have FreeBSD, you have all these different operating systems out there, and they all have little nuances. It's just, it takes time to develop those skills. And the reason I say that is because even in the security landscape, you all have taken the time to become better developers, and it's taking time for you to develop those skills. So as you go through and if you start tinkering around in the AppSec world, just know it's going to take time. Sometimes you're going to bang your head. It's going to be frustrating. You're going to learn about some kind of AppSec technique or some kind of vulnerability that you need to remediate. And you're going to be wondering, how the hell do I do this? How do I fix this? Or how do I test for this? What you're going to try to figure out what's the global impact. What happens if you have that vulnerability across multiple branches in your code bases? across multiple applications, across a very large organization. How do you coordinate fixing something like that across a large, massive code base? So it's not going to be an overnight thing unless you've been doing it for quite some time. And even then, it's still hard.
Perfect. Thank you, Ray. Awesome. Anybody else have any questions for Ray? And again, feel free to unmute yourself or go ahead and type it in the chat, and I'll repeat it. But these have been fantastic resources. Do check out Christina. She has a video from MiamiJS. So meetup.com/MiamiJS, or on YouTube, and you'll be able to check it in the chat going back about half an hour, and check out that presentation. Did you have anything to do with that one, Ray? Would you work with Christina about the one that she did about I want to say February?
No, Christina is just she's a machine, and so that was all her. Okay. That was all her. She's surpassed me, I think. So she's kicking the butt.
My, all right.
Yeah.
So sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, if nobody else, Scott says thank you very much, and myself as well. Very nice. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ray. That was fantastic.
And again, thank you for everybody for being so patient. Thank you for waiting for me. I'm sorry I had mixed up on dates, and I appreciate everybody being here and letting me just talk about security. It's such an honor to be here. So I appreciate it.
Right. If you had told nobody that you were not ready, we would have believed you. That sounds fantastic. If that's what you do when you're not ready, I can't even believe what I've seen you when you have everything prepared or things like that. But that sounded completely prepared. No, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.